I know you've been working on yourself for months, maybe years. You've been doing the internal work. You've been facing things you didn't want to face. You've been processing emotions, shifting patterns, examining beliefs, making conscious choices to be different than you've always been. You've been trying. Really trying. Putting in effort that no one sees, making changes that no one acknowledges, doing work that costs you everything. And when you look at your life, when you try to measure how far you've come, you can't see any difference. Your external circumstances look the same. Your relationships look the same. Your struggles look the same. The things that were hard before are still hard now. The patterns you thought you'd shifted are still showing up. The growth you're certain you've experienced doesn't seem to be reflected anywhere in your actual life. And that's devastating. Because you know you've changed. You feel different inside. You understand things you didn't understand before. You have awareness you didn't have before. You can see your patterns in real time now instead of only recognizing them afterward. You're making different choices, even small ones, even ones no one else would notice. But none of that seems to matter. Because the progress you can feel internally isn't showing up externally. And everyone around you, if they're paying attention at all, still sees the same person they've always seen. Still treats you the same way. Still expects the same things from you. Still holds you to the same patterns because they haven't seen evidence that you've changed. And you start to doubt yourself. You start to wonder if the internal changes are real. If maybe you're just convincing yourself you've grown when really you're still exactly who you've always been. If maybe all this work hasn't actually accomplished anything except making you more aware of how stuck you still are. But the work is real. The changes are real. The growth is real. It's just invisible. And it's invisible because internal change operates on a completely different timeline than external change. Internal change happens first, often years before it manifests externally. And during that gap, during the time between internal shift and external evidence, it feels like nothing is happening. But something is happening. You're becoming someone different at a foundational level. And that foundational change has to solidify, has to stabilize, has to become your new baseline before it can produce visible external effects. Think of it like building a house. The foundation is the first thing you build, but it's also the least impressive part. It's just concrete in the ground. Nothing beautiful. Nothing functional. Nothing that looks like a house. And if someone walked by while you were working on the foundation, they wouldn't see a house at all. They'd just see a hole in the ground with some concrete. But that foundation is what makes everything else possible. Without it, without that invisible underground work, nothing else can be built. The walls can't go up. The roof can't go on. None of the visible, impressive parts of the house can exist without the foundation being solid first. That's where you are right now. You're building the foundation. And foundations are invisible. They don't look like progress. They don't look like anything. They're just there, underground, holding space for what will eventually be built on top of them. And you're frustrated because you've been working on this foundation for so long and you still don't have a house. You still don't have anything visible to show for all this work. You're still standing in front of what looks like nothing, trying to convince yourself and everyone else that something is actually happening here. But something is happening. The foundation is being built. And it's taking longer than you thought it would. Longer than seems reasonable. Longer than you can bear sometimes. Because foundation work is slow. It's meticulous. It has to be done right because everything else depends on it. You can't rush it. You can't skip steps. You can't decide it's good enough and move on to the more visible work before it's actually solid. And your nervous system knows this. Even when your conscious mind doesn't. Your nervous system knows that the internal changes you've made need time to stabilize, time to become your new baseline, time to be so thoroughly integrated that they're automatic instead of something you have to consciously maintain. And until that integration is complete, until the foundation is solid, the external can't shift. Because external change is built on internal foundation. And if you try to create external change before the internal foundation is solid, it won't last. It'll collapse the moment it's tested because there's nothing holding it up. So your nervous system keeps you here. In the invisible phase. In the foundation building phase. In the part where you're doing important work that nobody can see, including you most of the time. And it makes you feel like you're not making progress. Like all this effort is going nowhere. Like you're working harder than you've ever worked and somehow ending up in the same place. But you're not in the same place. You're in a completely different place internally. You've changed at a level so deep that it hasn't percolated up to the surface yet. You've shifted in ways that haven't had time to reorganize your external reality yet. And I know that doesn't feel like enough. I know you want the external evidence. You want people to notice. You want circumstances to reflect your internal changes. You want proof that all this invisible work is real and matters and is leading somewhere. But you can't have that yet. Not because the work isn't real. Not because it doesn't matter. But because the timeline between internal change and external evidence is longer than anyone tells you. Much longer than you want it to be. Internal changes can take years to show up externally. Years. And during all that time, you're doing the work, making the changes, becoming different, and seeing no external evidence of it whatsoever. And that's normal. That's how it works. That's the actual timeline of deep transformation, not the compressed, edited, highlight reel version you see in other people's stories about change. They did foundation work too. They spent years in the invisible phase too. They questioned whether any of it was real too. They just don't talk about that part. They talk about the point when the external finally shifted. When people started noticing. When circumstances started reflecting their internal changes. But they don't talk about the years before that. The years when they were building foundation that nobody could see. The years when they were changing internally while everything external stayed the same. The years when they wondered if they were deluding themselves about whether any of this work mattered. Those years are invisible in their stories. Just like the work you're doing right now is invisible in your life. But that doesn't mean it's not happening. It just means it hasn't surfaced yet. And it will surface. When the foundation is solid. When the internal changes have stabilized. When your nervous system has integrated the new baseline so thoroughly that it's automatic. When you've become so different internally that the external has no choice but to reorganize itself to match. But that takes time. More time than you've been given. More time than you want. More time than seems fair or reasonable. And during all that time, you have to keep doing the invisible work without external validation. You have to keep building foundation that nobody sees. You have to keep trusting that the internal changes are real even when nothing external suggests they are. That's the hardest part. Not the work itself, but doing the work without any evidence that it matters. Changing without any acknowledgement that you're changing. Growing without any reflection of that growth in your actual life. It requires a level of faith that feels unreasonable. Faith in yourself. Faith in the process. Faith that internal change eventually produces external change even when the gap between the two feels infinite. And some days you have that faith. Some days you can feel that something is different, that you're different, that the work is real even if it's invisible. But other days you lose it. Other days it feels like you're lying to yourself. Like you're making up progress that doesn't exist. Like you've been spinning in place for years convincing yourself you're moving forward when really nothing has changed at all. And on those days, all I can tell you is this: the invisibility of progress doesn't mean progress isn't happening. It just means you're in the phase where the work is foundational. Where everything important is happening underground. Where the changes are so deep they haven't had time to surface yet. You're not spinning in place. You're building foundation. And foundation building doesn't look like progress. It looks like nothing. It looks like you're still in the same place you've always been. But you're not. You're somewhere completely different. You just can't see it yet because the difference is internal. And internal differences take time to become external realities. So keep doing the invisible work. Keep building the foundation. Keep making the internal changes even though they're not reflected externally yet. Not because you can see that it's leading somewhere, but because deep change requires invisible phases. Requires time underground. Requires foundation work that nobody acknowledges because nobody can see it. And when the foundation is solid, when the internal changes have stabilized completely, when your nervous system has integrated your new baseline so thoroughly that it's who you are instead of who you're trying to be, then the external will shift. Not because you forced it. Not because you did one more thing. But because external reality naturally reorganizes to match internal reality once that internal reality is solid enough. But the solidity takes time. And during that time, progress is invisible. And you have to keep working without evidence. Keep changing without acknowledgement. Keep building without anyone noticing. That's where you are. In the invisible phase. In the foundation building. In the gap between internal change and external evidence. And it's brutal. And it's lonely. And it requires you to trust something you can't see, can't prove, can't point to as evidence that any of this matters. But it does matter. The work is real. The changes are real. The progress is real. It's just invisible. For now. Until the foundation is solid enough to support the visible structures. And then everyone will see. Then the external will reflect the internal. Then your circumstances will match who you've become. But not yet. Right now, you're still building. Still underground. Still in the invisible phase where all the important work happens and none of it shows. So keep building. Keep changing. Keep doing the invisible work. Not because you can see results, but because foundation work is always invisible. And you're laying foundation right now. Foundation that will hold everything that comes next. Even though nobody sees it. Even though you sometimes doubt it's real. Even though it takes so much longer than you ever thought it would. You're building something solid. Something lasting. Something that will hold. And one day, the invisible will become visible. The internal will become external. The foundation will support structures everyone can see. But today, you're still underground. Still building. Still in the invisible phase. And that's exactly where you need to be. Even though it doesn't feel like progress. Even though nobody acknowledges it. Even though you question it every day. You're making progress. Real progress. The kind that lasts. It's just invisible for now. And invisible progress is still progress. Even when you can't see it. Especially when you can't see it. So trust it. Trust yourself. Trust the invisible work. It matters. It's real. It's building something that will eventually be undeniable. Just not yet. Not while you're still laying foundation. Not while the work is still underground. But eventually. When the foundation is solid. When the internal has fully stabilized. Then the visible will come. Not because you forced it. But because that's what happens when foundation work is complete. The house starts to rise. And everyone can see what you've been building all along. But first, the foundation. First, the invisible work. First, the time underground. That's where you are. And that's exactly where you need to be. Building. Invisible. But real. So keep going. Keep building. Keep trusting the invisible work. It's leading somewhere. Even when you can't see where. Even when it looks like nowhere. It's leading to solid ground. To stable foundation. To structures that will last. You just have to keep building. In the invisible. For as long as it takes. And trust that invisible work is still work. Invisible progress is still progress. Even when nobody sees it. Especially when nobody sees it. You're building something real. Something that will hold. Something that matters. It's just invisible. For now. While the foundation forms. So let it be invisible. Let yourself work underground. Let the progress be real even when you can't see it. Because it is. Real. Important. Leading somewhere. Just invisibly. For now. Until the foundation is solid enough to build on. Then everyone will see. But for now, just you. Just your knowing. Just your faith that the invisible work matters. Because it does. More than you know. More than anyone sees. It's building your foundation. And foundation is everything. Even when it's invisible. Especially when it's invisible. So keep building. In the dark. Underground. Invisible. That's where foundations are made. And you're making one right now. Real. Solid. Lasting. Just invisible. For now.